KY Teacher writes, I'm seeing more and more of those wood veneer pieces in collections. I've been noticing them for years in stores, but I was never really sure how to use them in my scrapbooks. Can someone give me ideas on how you use them? Glitter Girl, can you help KY Teacher work wonders with wood veneer?
Of course I can. I've just taken a selection of different wood veneer pieces and put them all in a bowl. Now, if you have lots of wood veneer in your collection and are looking for a way to organize it, I'm not your best example because as you've seen from the way I keep my die cuts and all other things like that, I just take one sort of embellishment and put it all together in a mix. And I get quite inspired by rifling through the bowl to see what's there. However, I know that doesn't work best for everybody, so I'll tell you straight away that if you want to see a really good example of how to keep it all separate, go look up Amy Tan's most recent Project Life video here on the Two Piece channel, and you'll see she keeps hers in a box where everything is really, really neat and organized, and she can go right to it. So that's kind of two ends of the spectrum there, and I'll just direct you there for organization right from the beginning. But wood veneer comes in all sorts of different sizes and shapes and designs. So there's a set that's in here that has all these different kinds of frame pieces. There's some that are words. So I have different little words and bits and pieces there. I have some really specific embellishments like typewriters in a few different sizes. And then some things that are a bit more geometric, some chevrons, diamonds, triangles. It comes in all different sorts of things. So I've pulled those out to use, and I'll put plenty of them on the shopping list so you can have a look at all the different things that are available in the store. And in order to focus mostly on how to use the wood veneer as an embellishment, which is going to come quite late in the layout process, I'm going to set this aside for a moment, and I'm going to show you that today's page is based on this sketch, which is available here at Two Piece. It's from a 2011 class called Stretch Your Sketch, which was by Jen Gallacher. So this is the June sketch, and I'll include a link so you can see not only her sketch and everything else, but also her video for the page that she makes, which will look quite different to the page that I'll make today. In theory, anyway, we'll see how that works. And so this is how this is where I'm starting with my design, and I have, this calls for one big photo, and I've printed a photo at 8 by 8. So I'm going to use that along with these supplies. So in addition to my wood veneer, I have 3 pieces of pattern paper that I'm starting with. This one for the background, which is from the 14 collection by Crate Paper. This one with the different hearts is also from 14. And then this aqua asterisk print, which is from LA Studio in their You and Me collection. And a few different people asked last time about, is it L Studio or is it LE Studio? Well, the person that it's named for, the L behind the studio is not L, she's LE. So there we go. So it's LE's Studio. I'm not just making that up, I promise. And so I'm going to use the diagonal stripe as my background. And I chose the heart print because I thought it mimicked this look of the embellishment of something that was in lines and had a little shape. So instead of making individual pieces like you might make rectangles and stars with your trimmer and a punch or something like that, I'm going to cut 2 strips of hearts and use that. So I'm just going to cut the different pieces to the right size so that I can start to put this together, and then I'll show you all the embellishment, and that's where the wood veneer is going to come in. One of the things I knew I wanted to alter with this sketch from the beginning is that it's very straight and orderly, and I wanted to make it a little bit more angled. Not a lot, but just a little bit. So I have all my major elements here that are shown on the sketch, and I'm just going to take it apart and piece it back together using a very few little angles and taking this large box away from the edge slightly. So in the sketch it's flush to the edge, but because I've put a border of craft cardstock around that edge, I'd prefer to bring it in just a little bit so that the pink goes all the way around the edge for a frame. Then I have my 2 rows of the heart pattern paper, and I decided to cut them into 2 pieces because the hearts are a little big and need to overlap a little bit if I'm going to include both of them. And I definitely wanted to include this one with the aqua colored heart because that would tie these pieces into that color scheme. So both of these strips are the same width as that aqua colored box, but by offsetting them and angling them ever so slightly, then we get a little bit of a different proportion. And I'm going to tuck that photo in there, but before I attach that, I want to do the pieces to go up here. And in the sketch, this space is a little bit bigger because the photo is shorter. But I'm going to take a few little tabs, or 2 little tabs, to add at the top. And pieces like this, all the embellishments, these paper embellishments, they're all from the You and Me collection. And I just picked out different pieces that match with the color scheme and from a variety of the different packs. So some of them are rectangles, some of them are squares, and some of them are the tabbed pieces. I love little tabs like this to show them at the top, but in this case, because it's not going in a divided page protector or something where you're going to see the whole box, I don't really want to waste this cute little detail down here. And the same thing is going to happen with this. I'm only going to use the top part. So I'm just going to cut the bottom half away so that I can use those elsewhere. It's just because there's a nice detail and there's no sense in it going to waste. And what I wanted to do is overlap these so that I can change the wording ever so slightly. So now I have that piece that's nice and easy to attach. I want to make sure this is going to be behind the photo, but I want it to be able to be on the page. I don't want it above the layout. It certainly could go above. You can put these sorts of tabs at the top of the page and have that little bit above the page protector in your album. But in this case, I did want it to be further down here on the page. And then in this sketch, there's also this space with 2 round elements, one large and one small. Well, the You and Me collection has both large and small circle die cuts, so I just picked 2 that had that aqua color in common, and this sort of fabric-y craft or tea-dyed texture is also repeating here on the page, and that pulls this collection together with this one because this has the distressed brown look. So I'm just going to place those on the page to mimic the placement in the sketch, and when I get everything else down, I'm going to come in and add some more embellishment to these, including those wood veneer pieces. So now I'm ready to add in my photo. And I may need to make a little bit of an adjustment of these pieces here, or might fit just right. Let's see. I can just pull this up enough that I can tuck the photo underneath. That'll work. So now I have the base of my Valentine's themed layout for today's adventure, and I'll get my title and my writing down on the page so that then we have the room to focus on the embellishment and all the different things I could do with those wood veneer embellishments. For my title lettering, I used 2 styles of thickers. Both of them are styles that I've used before. This has been a real favorite, the Scene alphabet, originally from Amy Tangerine line and available in lots of different colors, but I love the turquoise glitter. And then this more scripted font is called Lullaby, which was an older alphabet that was kind of a classic, and this one in gray was kind of my all-time favorite thicker, but they did it in flocked chipboard for one of the crate collections, and so that's in pink, but it is available in a few different colors. And it just made sure to mimic the different letters that I used at the top and the bottom. So at the top I used the numbering, so although I'm kind of hoping for a Valentine type vibe with this, of course Valentine's hasn't happened this year yet, and I've scrapbooked last year's Valentine's photos, so I actually wanted to use today's adventure to scrap a New Year's photo that I didn't have in my album yet. But I think you can do this sort of photo certainly works with Valentine's products, even though it's for New Year. So I wanted the year at the top and Happy New Year at the bottom, and just because I didn't have more words that I wanted to add up here, use the little greater than, less than signs to draw a little arrow and fill in that gap, just so I could bring in that same turquoise glitter at the top and the bottom. Then I also repeated these small stickers, which are a set from Dear Lizzie, 5th and Frolic, which includes both a white tile alphabet with gold and then the gold with the white on top. So just mixed and matched those to put in a little bit of the gold, but mostly the white tiles, and added my journaling along the side and the bottom. So that means I'm ready to get focused on my embellishment, and I want to add in some bits and pieces to these spaces that already have things. And this space definitely gives me room to dress it up. So I thought I would come to the wood veneer first and look for round pieces that might go with this idea of the circle motif. But I do want to keep that remember word in the picture if possible. So that piece works. And then I also just have some plain circles. So I might add a few more dots to this side than what appears in the original sketch. And that pinked circle I also have in a smaller piece here. So I could mix those in. Then if I look at the other pieces that I have, do have some words maybe that might work. I think bringing in triangles or chevrons on this page or this sort of scrolled frame is probably a bit too much considering all that's already here. So I think for now I'll work with these pieces that I've pulled out, and I may not use them all, but I wanted to look at a few different things that you can do. You can, of course, leave wood veneer plain as it is, or you can alter the color, and it can be easily altered with ink from an ink pad or by using a mist. So I've pulled out some pink ink here to show you how easy it is to color the wood veneer. And of course, on a shape that is the same front and back, you get two chances. So if it goes a bit wrong on one side, you can turn it over. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that once you add the ink to the wood veneer, it doesn't take adhesive quite as well, so you may need to use a stronger adhesive. I normally just use my usual tape runner, but if I ink one side and then decide to turn it over and use the other side, I find I have to use something stronger like glossy accents or a liquid adhesive. So all I did was rub the wood veneer over the top of the ink pad, and it picks up that color. And then if you want to add more shadow to it, you can use ink around the edges just like you would with a piece of paper and change the look really quickly. You can also then stamp right on top of it, of course. So I'll grab a word stamp that will fit in that space and show you how that would look right on top of that coloring. Just chosen a small word stamp from this Dear Lizzie 5th and Frolic set, and because it's clear, I can show you two different colors in theory, because I can just stamp over the top. So I wanted to show you with the distress ink first, because this will be paler, but this is the same color that I just added around the edges. So that gives kind of a distress ink in brown, gives more of a burnt in look, but it is harder to read, especially if you've already added color. You can imagine that that would be a bit more contrast on the plain side here. Just show you. So it's a bit easier to see on the pale side, but it is still a very subtle look with distress inks because the colors are always a bit more muted, and when there's more than one ink color there, they will blend together, and that's what they're meant to do. So if you like subtle, then that is a good look with the distress ink. If you want it to be a bit more obvious, using something that's a bit more permanent, so this is a Memento black ink, will give you a much more defined stamp, so that version is a lot easier to read. Still will be a little bit soft around the edges because it's not like a paper. It has more gaps in the wood where it's more porous than a normal sheet of paper. So slightly different look. So it just gives a little bit of a softer finish around the edge than when you stamp the same stamp onto paper. In addition to adding ink and stamping right on top of the wood veneer, you can also use your stamping supplies to emboss wood veneer. So I'm just using a clear embossing ink like Versamark. And on some paper, I'm just going to make sure that it's all covered on one side in the ink. That ink then makes it nice and sticky to hold the embossing powder. So this is some American Crafts embossing powder in a nice pale pink. So that is all covered now, and I can funnel the extra embossing powder back into the jar, and then I left the label off. And then I can heat this piece. Once that's all heated, then I have that enamel-like finish on top of the wood veneer that picks up the color of the embossing powder. Or if you wanted to just have the enamel look without color, you can use something like Versamark or clear embossing ink with clear embossing powder, and you could go right over the top of something like this, or a plain piece that would just give you a glossy finish. And if one coat of the embossing powder doesn't give you enough of an enamel look, you can just repeat that process and add more ink, add more embossing powder over the top, and you'll get a thicker layer. It also means that you can add in a few other little bits. So if you wanted mostly embossing powder, but maybe a tiny little bit of sparkle to make it match these letters, you could just sprinkle in a tiny little bit of turquoise glitter with your embossing powder, and it will melt into the enamel finish. So a few different pieces there, and I think I'm going to start adding these so that they're actually forming some sort of embellishment here. I went ahead and repeated those same inking processes on more pieces so that these will all look like they match. I added lots of brown ink around the plain circles, and then added just that same brown ink to the wording, and backed this smaller piece with just a little bit that I've cut out of a die cut card. And I'm ready to start adhering these. But I wanted to add a little bit of something else to dress these up, and one thing that works really well is twine, because you can just wrap it around a shape like this that has an outline to it, and so you can just loop this through a few times and tie a little bow. And of course, then if it's an outline piece like this, you can add anything you want here. You could tie on a little a charm, or punch out a little piece and make basically a paper charm. I could take a little heart, punch it from paper, and then use my paper piercer to make a spot where I could thread it through onto this little bow. So this one I'll just go ahead and attach with my normal adhesive. I like the dot roller for this because then I don't have to go back and clean up along the edges. It's really, really easy. And spray adhesive also works well on wood veneer for that same reason. There's no real cleanup to get all those little shapes around the edge where your adhesive might show. And then these pieces can just be glued on. This one I adhered the die cut with the same adhesive. Everything here is just that same roller adhesive, nothing extra special. This one in the middle. And then this I want to go over the top here. So I'm just looking at where it's going to adhere, and it's the first and last letters. And we'll give it a try. If this normal adhesive wasn't strong enough, then I would go to a liquid adhesive, because something like this is going to be way too hard to cut double-sided tape to match. But actually that feels quite secure because of the embossing powder. I think it wouldn't attach as well if it was over the top of the ink, but the embossing powder seems to be holding quite well. And then another little detail, I wanted to bring in a little bit more of that twine so it's not just one little spot. So one little heart detail you can do is to take your baker's twine and wrap it around your finger twice. Oh, try again. So that you have two loops, and then you have a spot where your edges meet here at the top, right? And then you're going to use a stapler. I'm using the tiny attacher to make this a nice small embellishment, and you can staple right through these the wood veneer pieces. So I'm placing the spot where all the strings come together at the bottom, and staple right through all of that. So that's attached completely to my layout now. And then take those two circles and separate them, and you get something that's kind of a vaguely a heart shape. So a cute little Valentine edition, or anything where you want to use a heart motif. And then I like to add just a few little dots of adhesive to the edge that's free, and then you can get a nice little curl onto the page there. And if the sides of the heart don't really want to stay in place, you can do the same thing. Just use a tiny little bit of the dot adhesive and then press it into place. And so to bring all that embellishment up to here, I think I need to repeat maybe one little piece of wood veneer and one little twine heart up here in the top corner, and then I'll call it done for today. And there we go, that's all done. Since there are only two of the plain small circles in that pack, I also had a pack that has all different types of little tabs, and some of them are circle tabs, so I used that up here and just did the same exact technique with the pink ink, the black stamping, and then the brown ink around the edge, and the baker's twine stapled on top. So your challenge this week is to use wood veneer on any project you would like. Upload it to the gallery, and in the comment box beneath your layout, tell us a little bit about what you enjoy doing with veneer, different techniques, or if you prefer it plain, different shapes or looks that you really like, and share that with us in the gallery. I'd love to see what you make with wood veneer this week. Thanks so much for watching.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopeasinabucket.com.